Okay everyone, welcome. Welcome to our Rally for Relocation. It's our second rally. We know many of you were at the first, and we know many of you are joining us for the first time today. So, we had planned for doing a traditional march. We were all going to be on the street, on Victoria Street, and marching and raising our voice in support of the residents and the traders and the broader community here in Richmond. But as you know, we've all been faced with some serious challenges over the last few weeks, and as you know, this changes day by day. So what have we done? We've needed to change things up a little bit. So we knew that it was still important to you that we go forward with the rally. We knew that it was still so very important to you that we continue to raise the voice for all of the residents and the traders in Richmond. So what did we do? We've got a fantastic team. They've worked very hard over the last week, and we've changed up the format. So while it wasn't what we were originally planning, there are some opportunities, because what it means now is many of you can join us today that perhaps may not have been able to otherwise, and we welcome you all on board. And we'll just spend the first minute or two providing an opportunity for those people to jump on. We've got people jumping on all the time as we speak, and we welcome you all as you come on board with the rally today. So part of the challenge as well is you know that day by day all of the rules and all of the guidelines around how we respond to the COVID-19 challenge are changing. So as those rules have changed, we've had to change up how we do things. We were originally going to have a much larger panel for you, but naturally the issues around social distancing and so forth made that a bit more challenging for us. So we'll introduce ourselves at the moment, but we've had to reduce our panel down to 2. We know, however, that all of the rest of you are on there with us, and we welcome and appreciate your support. Now that we've gone live, what can you do? We need you to get involved. Just like any rally, you are a key part of this. You are a key part of the success of today. So we have really appreciated the response over the last few days when we advertised the event and when we let you know about the changes. But what do we need you to do now? We need you to jump online, and we need you to share the video. We need you to comment. We want to hear. This is about you. We're here today to provide a voice to the community. So jump online, share, tag your friends, tag your family, share it as widely as you can. We have multiple streams going today, but get on this video, share it to your friends, like it, comment, and we will be taking questions as well. So it's really, really important. Today gives you the opportunity to continue to raise your voice. We know we're facing challenges with the coronavirus, but we can continue to support the campaign at the same time. So thank you all for joining us. We hope you appreciate that we've had to take this responsible approach, but we will always stand committed with you through these challenges. Now, before we get into the formalities, I just want to take the opportunity also to acknowledge the traditional owners on the land of which we are meeting today. And we would also like to pay our respects to their elders, past and present, and any Aboriginal elders of other communities who may be with us today. We also really want to give a big shout out to our venue for today. So as you know, one of the key challenges for us has been the devastating impact of the injecting room on Victoria Street traders. One of the positives to come out of that is just how strongly the traders and the community have come together to stand up and to say that this is not okay and that we need you to protect and preserve our community and to look after our traders on Victoria Street. So as part of that, we want to give a big shout out today to the Avery Hotel on Victoria Street. They've been kind enough to loan us this space and to allow us to live stream from here today. So a big shout out to the Avery, and a big shout out to all of our other traders and businesses along Victoria Street. We are here for you, and we will always be here for you. So that said, let's get into our panel members. So today you've got myself and you have Bon. So Bon, if you wouldn't mind introducing yourself.
Hello everyone. Can I check if everyone can hear us okay? If you can hear us, my name is actually Bon Win, and I'm absolutely delighted to be invited and participate in this panel discussions. As you know, that I absolutely take my hat off for the team, and as you can see, that actually advocating for the self-injection room to be relocated. It's actually putting the health interest of the public first, okay? The local resident Richmond interest first. Now, the decision not to hold a rally today, to march on the street, it's also putting the health interest of the public first. So I absolutely take my hat off for that decision, and I think it's the right thing to do. And as you can see, that we are observing all the recommendations from the government as well. Meanwhile, online, you're sitting at home for your safety. You can still raise your voice, raise your concerns, share your concerns. That doesn't mean that you're sitting at home, you can't do anything. You can share your concerns, raise your question with us. This information or your wish will be passed on to the relevant government. And I want to point out something. In a democratic world, we are here putting the public interest first, working together with bipartisan government, all sides of government. We are trying to call governments and MPs to work together to help us. We are not here to ridicule any political party or ridicule any government at all. I want to point that out right from the outset. We are here as community leaders. I'm a community leader. I don't live in Richmond, but I have a lot of my constituents who live in Richmond. So I grown up in a young age, and I actually come to Richmond on multiple times to have my lunch, to have my dinner. And Richmond have become an iconic, actually, suburb for the Vietnamese community. The Vietnamese community have been settled in Australia for over the past 45 years. And we have made our landmark here in Richmond as well. This is where our community have settled. So we want to hear from you, your question, and we will raise the issue. We will share with you a number of things that we have found out. David and I will take time to share that with you, but you can help us by putting questions. You can help us by making comments. All of these will be heard.
Yep, and jump on there now and comment and tell us, are you hearing us okay? Is everything going well? If you have any issues at all with the stream, jump on there, shoot us a comment, we'll make any adjustments we need to. And beyond that, today is about your lived experiences and it's about your questions that must be answered. So as Bon said, the two of us are here today. I'll briefly introduce myself. Many of you will already know me, but my name is David. I'm a local resident and I have been on this campaign now for almost 12 months. So we have a very large portion of our community that have come together and basically said, look, this is not acceptable. We must have a coordinated voice and we must have a strong voice to advocate for the changes that need to be made. This is a trial and that's what we're about doing, learning from the trial and advocating with government and other key stakeholders for their changes to be made. So between the two of us, we'll do our best to answer your questions, but we'll also, we feel we need to set the scene. So we know that by going with this format for the event, there are going to be many of you that may be joining us for the first time. There are many of you that have probably heard about some of the issues that have been experienced in Richmond, but may not necessarily have a good sense of, you know, what's going on? What does it actually look like on the ground on a day-by-day basis? So if you don't mind, I would like to take the opportunity to just briefly set the scene for everyone at home. And again, as you hear some of these things, if you've experienced this, if you have some questions around what we can do, put them online. We'll do our very, very best to answer as many questions as we can, but also keep in mind that the benefit of today and the benefit of taking this format is we can keep that conversation going. So when we stop the live event today, that's not where it ends. We will keep the conversation. This is your opportunity to raise your voice. So jump in, get involved, send your comments, send your questions, let us know what you need the government and the rest of the community to hear. So let's set the scene. Why are we here today? So what do we have? We have in 2018 the trial of a medically supervised injecting room established in the heart of Richmond. And importantly, it's been established in the heart of a residential neighbourhood. It's been established right in the middle of a high-density public housing estate. Worse still, it's been located right beside a primary school, and as we spoke about up front, it is very, very close to and has concentrated the issues around Victoria Street, and the result is a serious detrimental impact to our traders. So it's a 2-year trial established in 2018. We are now only a few months out from the end of that initial trial. The initial 2-year period is due to end at the end of June 2020. But in the legislation that's been established for the injecting room trial, there is the option for that to be extended for another 3 years. It doesn't mean that it will be, and it doesn't mean that it has to be. And also, just keep in mind, whenever I'm referring to legislation, there have been some proponents of the injecting room's location, people that want to keep it in its current location, that'll tell you it can't be changed, that it's in the legislation. Well, I'm just here to remind you again today that legislation can be amended by government at any time. If you jump on the government website in any given sitting period, there are amendments to legislation that are passed through. So regardless of it being legislated, it can and should be changed as soon as possible. Now, to set a bit more context as well, it's important to understand that the injecting room, by its own reports, caters to over 300 visits per day. That's 10,000 visits per month. So just imagine that. Just imagine that in your backyard if you're a public housing estate resident, if you're one of the local residents in the surrounding neighbourhood, if you're one of the children and the parents sending their children to school. Just imagine that. That's every single day, more than 300. Now, the other thing is, and this has been demonstrated now for the entire length of the trial, over and above those 300 users per day, you also have just as many, and in fact, the majority of our residents will tell you more than ever, public injecting. So this is beyond those that are using the room. This is those using the room and the many more that are still using the streets and the laneways and the surrounding neighbourhood to both score their drugs and to inject. And the other thing to keep in mind with those 10,000 visits per month is that after those visits to the injecting room, the users are free to leave the facility anytime they like. So you effectively draw a community of users and dealers into the heart of our neighbourhood, and then you let them essentially go straight afterwards, regardless of the state that they're in. Now, I have to say that the injecting room tries to keep people there as long as they can, tries to ensure that they are safe, but you can't guarantee that. They are free to leave anytime they like. So what have we experienced as part of this? We've experienced the proverbial honeypot, the thing that the proponents in the injecting room said would never happen. What we now have is one single injecting room that caters for the entire population of Melbourne and the entire population of Victoria. It is the only injecting room in Victoria. So you have 5 million Melburnians and 6.5 million Victorians all served by one injecting room. Imagine that in your backyard. Now, the other key issue with this, and a lot of people don't realise this, is that the injecting room trial was also sold on the premise that there would only be for heroin users. But shortly afterwards, that was expanded to now include users of other drugs. And worse still, or perhaps at the worst end of that spectrum, are methamphetamine users, so ice users. Now, I'm sure all of you have seen the erratic behaviour and the issues, the aggression, all of the issues that can come from ice usage. It is a scourge and it destroys people's lives. But imagine if you had ice users in your community every single day, drawn to your community by a government policy such as this. Now, the other thing is, when you put that in context, you go, okay, so surely all of this was thought about in advance. Surely all of this was considered before establishing the trial. Now, in the time that the community campaign has been running, we have had many community members working together as a team to research, to understand, and to demonstrate the evidence behind this. And what did we find? We found that no formal risk assessment had been done. So imagine that. You're drawing 10,000 users into a community every month, and you've done no formal risk assessment. You've placed it next to a school, no formal risk assessment. It just beggars belief that that can be the case. And as we spoke about up front,
But don't let us just be your voice, but we want to hear your voice as well. So it is important for you to be at home and actually raise your concern and ask a question. Put it on Facebook, send it to us, we'll have all of that. That would be kindly appreciated, ladies and gentlemen. And I just want to point it out here that David mentioned that the 10,000 visits per month. Now I did a quick calculation. Okay, if that is the case, it's going to add in the economy of actually Richmond. I'm just more concerned that that number has been displayed by the consumer number that normally that come to Victoria has been displayed by that number, and that is why it's evident that the business in Victoria has been gone downhill since the 7 injection room been introduced. Now, David was absolutely correct in pointing out that government policies or regulation can be amended or changed. Now, people can also change as well, and this is a very fundamental story that when I met some of the residents here last time at the rally, what they said to me, elderly people, senior citizen, what they said to me was that, Bon, I initially support the 7 injection room to be located in the location where it is, because I truly believe that I can save people. But now it's turning my life upside down. I want it to be changed. I want it to be relocated. So I think, David, this is the voice of the people that can no longer be ignored. This is why when I hear a story like that, I feel that I do. Yes, I am not your fellow local residents here, but I feel that I do have an obligation to be with you guys, to raise the concerns so that Richmond can come back to the way it was. Richmond can come back to people can actually safely walk down the street, and people's house or residents' house are not being interrupted by other activities that actually normally, in the normal circumstances, you would not find it in other suburbs, for example. So given that is the case, I think that, David, you said it in quite well. I mean, is there any other comments or anything like that around the room, or any
So we've got some questions coming in, and thank you for that. Keep sending them in. Keep giving us your experience and sending the questions. Keep sharing. Keep tagging your friends and family. Get the message out there. This is what today is all about. It's for you. We refuse to be silenced, and we refuse to give up on providing a voice to the local community. So we will, during the course of the event, aim to answer some of those questions. Thankfully, Tish has added some questions here to us at the moment. Bon, you've got a couple more there.
Yep.
So perhaps one of the things we should jump straight to, I think, is we spoke already about the legislation.
Yep.
So it's probably useful to consider the New South Wales
Well, I got a question here, direct here for you, David. Maybe you can help to answer this one. Why this New South Wales legislation for the room considered community in school, but not in Victoria? Now, in your view, was it actually considered at all? Was it actually clever or widely consulted within our community here at all? Maybe we can actually share this, and then our people at home can also jump in as well. Please.
And I think, Bon, you also tapped into probably one of the biggest challenges here for our community before, when you said that really the community here are feeling a little bit abandoned. Why are they feeling abandoned? Because, as you said, they supported and they continue to support the notion of harm minimisation. They continue to support doing the right thing by vulnerable people. We recognise that the scourge of heroin, the scourge of ice, it destroys people's lives. We want to be able to help people. But where they feel abandoned is when they are told that somehow or other their experiences are not real. And one of the key things that keeps coming back to is the legislation. Because in New South Wales, the legislation, so there's often this comparison drawn to King's Cross.
Absolutely.
And go, well, look, in King's Cross it's working well,
Yep.
We haven't had these issues, why would you have these issues here? But yet one of the most fundamental things that is overlooked is that in the New South Wales legislation, there are specific protections written into the legislation that would never allow it. So to that question, it would never be allowed next to a school. It would never have been allowed in the heart of a residential neighbourhood. Why? Because the legislation specified that it couldn't be. So you have to beg the question, for all of the good intention in Victoria, why did we overlook that? Why did we not include that same protection within the Victorian legislation? And we spoke up front about the ability to amend legislation. And we spoke up front about the fact that it's important to remember, this is a trial period. What is a trial about? A trial is about learning. A trial is about recognising what works and changing what doesn't.
And I totally agree that the trial is actually try to see if it works in terms of helping your fellow human being. And that's absolutely the right thing to do. Now, is it a concern that actually the trial seems to be at an expense of the children's future?
Yes.
That is definitely a concern. A trial seems to be compromising the activities of the normal citizens that actually locally live around here as well, and business
Yes.
people as well. Now, your question, I know that your question is a wonderful question. I hope that I can have the answer. David and I could have the answer for it. But maybe I could suggest that we can actually forward your question to the relevant authority and they can help to answer as well. That's something that we want to find out as
Yes.
well. Why was it not considered in Victoria?
And we have, and just for the benefit of everyone at home, we have asked this question in our advocacy. So over the last 12 months, advocating for the community, many of you know, but for those that you don't, we have met with government ministers. We have met with the state government, and we have asked this question specifically. And you know, perhaps again, I spoke before, but I don't think you can diminish how important it is to our community to have their voice heard. It is one of the most fundamental issues with the current trial. Where's the voice for the community? Why is it when our community comes to you as state government, as leaders, as the people who legislate for this trial, why is it that you try and silence us? You know?
I'm gonna have a bit more picky here, David. Who have you actually tried to make? You know, in the past, could you actually?
Yes, absolutely. So, as part of the community advocacy, we have requested meetings with the Premier.
Yep.
No response from the Premier. We did early on in the piece meet with Minister Foley. So many of you may not be aware, but Minister Foley essentially has the injecting room in his portfolio.
Yep.
And we did sit down and meet. And you know, in hindsight, you'd perhaps argue that the community was a bit naive. We kind of expected that with all of these things that we can clearly demonstrate, we would just sit down and we would explain those things. We would share those things.
And all of this work was actually done way before. I assume that it would have been done way before the coronavirus crisis was actually kicked in, right?
Back in the middle of last year.
At the moment, I can understand that the coronavirus crisis actually dominate other issues. I can understand the government or MP might not be able to meet with you, but I believe was that the case that you were trying to meet with them, trying to arrange for a meeting with them way before the crisis was kicked in. Is that correct?
Yes, absolutely. So the actual community campaign itself. So there've been. I want to give a shout out to many of the individuals in our community that prior to May last year had already been working hard on this issue. And they worked hard on that issue regardless of some proponents attacking them personally and trying to diminish their voice. So a big shout out to all of you that were really the catalyst for the campaign in the first place.
Yep.
But to your question, Bon, since May last year, the community campaign has had a team of community members working on behalf of the hundreds that are engaged in our campaign to represent them, to give them that voice. We actually went to ministers, we've met with ministers and we've met with many stakeholders, but the problem is even if they've met with you, they want to dismiss it. They don't want to hear what is really happening. And it might be important to note that recently, with the issues around the cladding on the public housing estate walk-ups on the north side of Elizabeth Street, the Premier himself came to Elizabeth Street, came to the walk-ups to see the cladding issues, but did nothing to understand what was going on Lennox Street near the injecting room. And that is why our community feels abandoned, and that's why we will never be silenced until that is addressed. That is not good enough from our leaders.
Oh, thank you for that, David. I think we have a lot of questions here, so we'll have to go through a bit more question. I'm not going to
Lots of questions coming in.
I'm not going to read it in any particular order, so I hope that if it's not in order, you guys forgive me at home, okay? So the next question would be, why does our government not practice the preventative mental health or rehab?
Yes.
Maybe you are a lot more closer to me. Maybe you take that first, David, and see what happens. And some of these questions, if I can answer them, I will. But if some that are actually more related to you, I'll leave it to you, David.
Thank you, Bon. So just reiterating that question. So why is preventative health not a priority here? And we've actually spoken about this as community. Again, our community are staunch advocates for harm minimisation. but it must work. It must work for all. It must work for the users, and it must work for the broader community. And at the moment, that's not working. But the harm minimisation is kind of at the end of that experience, yeah? So we know that drugs are destroying people's lives. So the first thing you want to do is prevent.
That's right.
Now, this goes straight to our point around relocation. One of the reasons, almost the key reason really, why we're arguing for relocation is actually to not only support better those that are currently suffering from addiction, but to prevent, to reduce the risk, to reduce the exposure of other community members, whether that be our children, whether that be some of the vulnerable people that are within the public housing estate. You know, let's not forget that you have thousands, around 5,000 people living in the public housing estate. This injecting room is literally in the middle of that housing estate. Every single day, going to and from their homes, using their facilities, they are surrounded by a concentrated illicit drug market. So to that question, why isn't prevention a priority? Surely one of the first things you have to do is to minimise the exposure to all of these people, which is really why you don't put it in the heart of a residential neighbourhood, you don't put it in the heart of a high-density public housing estate, and you don't put it next to a school. You must protect and preserve our community. So prevention, we're all for prevention. It should be a priority. Rehabilitation should closely follow. So if
the action so far seems to be in contrary with the prevention, in my view, if it's what's happening at the moment. The next question is, how can this be normalized? David, I'll leave that to you. You are the local resident. You are best to answer this question, David.
Thank you, Bon. Thank you. And look, again, you touched on this earlier when you spoke about the change to the community here and the kind of the sadness, really, I can't think of a better word, the sadness of the local community here that sees their diversity, their culture, their experiences being destroyed. And it's through this notion of normalisation that somehow or other, something that is a trial, something that has made much, much worse any existing issues with drug dealing and drug use, amplified it exponentially, and then basically just want us to accept that as a community, that somehow or other this becomes the new norm. And can I give you an example of that issue of normalisation? There was a person that said to us a number of months ago, as a proponent of the injecting room remaining where it is, well, perhaps it's good for the children to be exposed to this. Perhaps this is educational. And I'm sorry, that's a line that just, firstly, I can't fathom that anyone crossed it, but we refuse to accept it. We will never accept that be normalised.
Well, look, I think that in terms of normalised, what is normalised? I mean, normalised, that means that you're going to bring people back. People have to feel safe when they walk down Victoria Street. More people actually going to come back to Victoria Street for Vietnamese food, for example. When I mentioned Vietnamese food, I want to share with you a story. When the Vietnamese community came to Australia, and in their first settlement in Australia, because we were refugees, right? A lot of the young Vietnamese men came to Australia. And of course, on Victoria Street here, you probably remember the restaurant called Vào Đời. That restaurant was established by a Vietnamese Catholic priest. What was the purpose of that restaurant? So that restaurant was able to provide Vietnamese food to our fellow Australians, but the money coming out of that restaurant was actually for one purpose, and that purpose was to create Vietnamese culture activity for our young Vietnamese men, so they can actually interact into the community that they just got to, Australia. So this is one of the ways that culturally we can prevent actually crime, or we can actually get negative things that otherwise happen on the street. And I think that Richmond built on that foundation, from the community, from the residents. Now, normal to me is actually the local interests have to be respected, the local people have to be heard, okay, and then the other visitors can come in safely to participate in the activity that you have here in Richmond. Okay, so that's the question. I think is right. I think it's actually need to be normalized. In my view, it have to go back to
Yes,
in that sense.
absolutely. And can I just say, Bon, to that topic of normalisation, again, if you're listening to this at home, if you're part of the rally today, jump on and tell us about your experiences. Jump on and send us your questions. Explain just what it's been like for you to have to deal with this normalisation of stuff that should never be normalised. This is not normal in Australia, and we will never allow it to be normal. So jump online, tell us about your experiences, and remember to share with your friends. And remember also, one of the ways that you can stay involved is you can subscribe to the MRAC website. So our community campaign actually has a website, as well as our social media channels. So that's mracgroup.com, M-R-A-C group.com. Jump on there, subscribe. We also spoke before, and some of it goes to some of these questions here. We spoke about the evidence, we spoke about the experiences. One of the other advantages of jumping on the website, and why I would encourage people to do that, is diligently for almost 12 months now, our community have been researching this. And quite frankly, you shake your head. So the fact that we're sitting here today and having to argue for this is a head-shaking moment. But when you do the research, when you see what's going on, when you see the evidence, you simply shake your head every day. So get on there, people, subscribe, learn about the experience here, and let's make sure it is fixed in Richmond and it never happens anywhere else again.
David, I noticed that the time we have only 30 minutes left. So
Yes.
what we're going to do now, ladies and gentlemen, I'm going to read out a question from you, and David will actually respond to it. So that will save a bit of time rather than me interjecting. I will interject, and I will actually put in my take in as well. So the next question is actually, are there actually any reliable statistics that shows the room is actually reducing or increasing drug use?
Yes, so that's a very good point. So both qualitative and quantitative statistics, so those things that you can measure in numbers and those things that are about people's experiences. So one of our challenges has been, and we've spoken about the fact that our community is in many ways being abandoned and being ignored. So some of the statistics are being held back. So there have been a number of FOI requests that have either been significantly delayed or denied. So it has become a bit of a challenge. Certainly the lived experiences of our community demonstrate that all you have is an increase. But there are also some other statistics that go with that to support that. So for instance, ambulance call-outs. So the ambulance call-outs for essentially incidences relating to drug use have increased dramatically.
That has been increased.
Increased dramatically. Again, jump on the website, you can see all of this research, you can see all of these statistics, and they are verifiable facts. This is not us making it up. The one thing you can always rely on us as a community is to give you the actual facts, and from there you can make your own decisions. But jump on.
That's our main point. I mean, our purpose is actually to present facts to you and to listen to you, and that's what our purpose here, and to work with the community, so to bring the interest of the community back to you.
Yes, and one of the other statistics while we're on that is actually the distribution of needles in the area. So, one of the objectives of the actual injecting room trial was to reduce the amount of needles in the area and reduce the amount of public injecting. Now, in terms of statistics, the needle usage has gone through the roof. So the amount of needles distributed in this area has skyrocketed, and all of the lived experiences that you can find on the website and on our social media accounts will demonstrate to you what it's like on a day-by-day basis.
I just received another question sent directly to my phone, but I will leave that for a later stage. Now, there's the other question that asks that, are you concerned Ken Lay departed from the panel just 3 months from the trial end? Is that a concern that we as a local have? Is that a sign of something that we should all be concerned?
It's a very difficult circumstance. One of the challenges for us as a community is to speak frankly about these types of issues. It would have been great to have seen Mr. Lay continue through to the end of the review period. Naturally, many of you will know that he's taken up a role with the bushfire relief, and that's a really, really important role. But at the end of the day, I don't know that it changes necessarily. So it would be irresponsible of me to try and read anything into that. But more importantly, what I'd like to come back to really is that the actual independent review panel, so regardless of who's on that panel, they have a terms of reference and they have objectives that are within the Act that they need to be responding to. Now, the key thing with that, and we've touched on some of them already, but there are 6 objectives. And I spoke about the fact that a couple of those objectives, we've really been denied the data, right? And the government would appear very, very keen to hide any genuine data on those things for us. But what do we know? What do we actually know? I spoke about ambulance stats through the roof. I spoke about needle stats through the roof. One of the other issues is public amenity. It was meant to improve the neighbourhood's public amenity. Now, I think you don't have to spend too long in Richmond to understand that the decline has been dramatic, and you don't have to spend too long on Victoria Street to understand the impact it's had on our traders and on our businesses. So all of those things are a big fail. One of the other things was to reduce the number of deaths from drug use. Now, 6 months into the trial, a coroner's report demonstrated that there had been no change. Now, we've tried to get data since then, because that was only 6 months in. We acknowledge that, but at the moment we're denied that data.
Well, it's in contrary, isn't it? I mean, if the self-injection room is so good for people, why have we been denied with for them to provide us data? So they've been transparent at all levels to the local as well. That's something that I can't understand.
And as community members, how do you feel about that? At the end of the day, it's a democracy. This is your right to understand and to know this information. We're not talking about national security issues.
No.
These are not things that can be argued need to be kept quiet. This is what the objectives of the Act were meant to achieve, and it's time that we actually had the real data. So we know that it's failed on many fronts, and we know that the reason for that failure is because of its location.
So can I say safely that at least 50% of the criteria that has not been met, and the other 50 is actually denial of data?
Yes.
Okay, so that's safe. Now, David, you make mention that you make a number of attempts to meet with MPs and government officials. What does the new mayor think or do about the legislation?
Yes, and look, unfortunately, this is something that I personally feel very strongly about, so apologies if I show that too obviously. But quite frankly, the representation from both the current mayor of City of Yarra and the previous mayor have been less than satisfactory. So we understand and accept that as a local government, they don't have the direct decision-making power. That rests squarely with the state government. But they are your local representatives. And take a look at the recent issues around the proposed dumping of toxic soil in Wyndham. What did you see? A very strong and clear message straight away from the mayor that that will never be acceptable. And what has our local council done in terms of responding to our community's experiences, in terms of responding to our community's pleas? Can I say to you, Bon, at its worst, the current mayor, Mayor Coleman, she actually accused, in a public meeting, she accused our community of dumping needles in the school grounds.
That's, I don't know, I leave that decision to the reaction to the local resident here to make. But one of the next question here is actually, what does our locals really think? Well, I think that you responded to that question already. Anyhow, I will go on to one of the questions that was sent directly to my phone. Do you think the people will be interested in your concerns at this moment when everyone or even the government is just focused on the Wuhan virus?
That is a very, very good question. And as we spoke about up front, that is why we pressed on with the rally today. That's why we've changed the format to ensure that our community still has a voice. Because are these challenging times for us? Absolutely. But let's be clear. All of us working on this campaign and the community, we didn't want to be having to fight this fight.
No one wanted.
12 months, 18 months ago, we went to government and we told them what wasn't working. I said earlier, perhaps naively, what did we expect? We expected government to listen and we expected them to adjust. So yes, the coronavirus presents challenges, but let's be clear. We stood with the community and traders before the virus. We'll stand with them and with you all through the virus, and we will continue to stand with you and we will continue to fight beyond the virus. And we're about the community. We're about the public safety, the well-being, the amenity. Our main goal is to do what you talked about before.
Yep.
Preserve and enhance all of what makes Richmond an amazing place.
Yep.
So we can do that regardless of the virus. We can tackle both things. We know you're capable of that as a community, and we will keep fighting
As
that
you
fight.
really made, and that is we don't want to take on any fight at all. We don't want to fight anyone at all. We want to work together. We want to work together as if we have been working with the local resident as well. So we want to work with government. So I know, and you might share the view as well, and that is we are going through tough time at the moment. The Richmond actually been through a very devastating stage just because of the 7 injection room was introduced. Now that is actually going through the crisis of actually Wuhan virus, the coronavirus. I think that is actually devastating Richmond at the moment. So there's an opportunity for government to come in and help us. And please do help us and listen to your local constituents here as well. My next question that I'm going to put to you, and I love this sign here, which I will show everyone in a minute. What are the long-term psychological impacts on kids seeing this behavior around them? And this is this is actually really touching me, and I can unsee what I just saw. This is something, would you want your children to actually see that? Would you want your children to actually, of course, you would want the best for your children. But it's the local resident of Richmond have that opportunity for their children. I think that has been taken away as well. And also this one here, what do we want? We want the injection room to be relocated.
And just to that point, so let's talk seriously about that. When we say risk, see, it's very easy to get lost just in the words, but let's be really serious about the risk to our children,
Yep.
both physical and psychological.
Yep.
How many of us have seen someone walking down the street with a steak or a bar or something else, smashing something up? My wife and I have witnessed that in our own alleyway. And that alleyway is used by children. We have our local children who ride their bikes around in there, who put their trampoline out in there. It's only been luck, not good management, that something more serious hasn't already happened. So let's be real about it. Go to any of the research and any of the guidelines around childhood well-being and development, and it will say to you, this is not okay. These things should never be what our children are regularly exposed to. So when we talk about the risks, when we talk about the impacts, these are not words.
Yep.
These are not platitudes. This is what our children and our families and our community and our public housing estate residents.
Yep.
Again, we keep needing to focus on this fact, and yet it should be already clearly acknowledged. Thousands of people living in the housing estate. Thousands of people that comprise 1,200 or more families.
Yep.
A high proportion of children. They're meant to be getting a good start in life.
What you say now does explain why that I see there was a lot of children at our last protest.
Yes.
And I was actually, why is children here with us? I was actually a bit puzzled, but it completely makes sense. My next question would be, what is the risk assessment for the school and the mental health centre?
So we spoke earlier about risk assessments, and we mentioned the fact that in terms of the injecting room trial, no formal risk assessment is done. That's mind-boggling enough. The only risk assessment that has been acknowledged by the government is one that was done as part of the needle and syringe program. So prior to the injecting room, there was a needle and syringe program here, and a risk assessment was done.
Yep.
And you know what is even more mind-boggling and more shameful in all of this is there are still recommendations from that risk assessment relating to the school that are still to this day not implemented.
Oh, wow.
So that is how serious or not they took the risk assessment. So far as you can tell, it's a box-ticking exercise at best. So again, this is not appropriate. This should never happen in any community. So can I just say, if you're one of the parents of the children in our community, jump on there, tell us about your experiences, share your experiences with all of the others joining us today. This is really, really important. It's your opportunity to share your voice, both now and into the future.
But your answer in the last question will relate to this one as well. I mean, in terms of assessment, we've got 15 minutes left, ladies and gentlemen, so we have to be very sharp in our answer, David. Who is reviewing the trial and what is the process?
So the decision-making power rests with the government, and that's been really, really clearly reinforced many, many times. But there is an independent review panel, and you spoke before about Mr. Ken Lay, who was part of that three-person review panel up until recently. So you've got an independent review panel, 3 members, chaired by Margaret Hamilton, and again, I come back to their whole terms of reference, is about the objectives of the Act. So they're reviewing the trial, they are handing down a report within the coming month or two, and it is on the basis of that report that the government should be making their decisions. Now, I know we've got a couple other questions, and I know we're running short on time, but if you don't mind, Bon, there's one other thing that I just want to briefly mention about the review. And it cuts right to the point of our community being abandoned and a refusal by the current government to listen to our community. Now, some of that is always about, oh, look, but it's just, you're just a bunch of NIMBYs and all of that sort of stuff. Well, I want to share with you today, and we will put this on our website, we will get it out on our social media, but there are other injecting sites around the world, yeah? Now, some of those are in Canada. Now, the government of Alberta recently commissioned a panel, an expert panel, to do a socio-economic impact analysis of their injecting room sites. And it is scary how it sounds just like Richmond. So this is a panel of independent experts. It's more than the 3 that we have in Victoria.
Yep.
And certainly their terms of reference are broader, but what did they find? Public drug use increased. The amenity declined.
Yes.
Crime increased. Safety decreased. Some of the reporting of the statistics left a lot to be desired. So I won't go through all of that today because we don't have time. But as a community, Richmond, and as a community, anyone else who may ever have to deal with these types of issues, let's be really, really clear. This experience is not limited to Richmond. The research from Canada, independent review, is saying the same thing. So what can we expect from our own independent review panel? Given that the experiences are almost mirrored, we can expect from our independent review panel here in Victoria to have identified the same things, which clearly indicate the trial must not continue in its current location.
Well, let's hope that is the case. But then I've been through that report as well, and they seem to suggest that the report, the way it was reporting, I think there was some questioning around that, the credible about how it was reported. Now, you make mention earlier about the risk assessment. Recommendation from the risk assessment was not implemented. I also have concerns now that there's a review of the trial. Out of that review of the trial, what's going to happen? I mean, there was ignore from the risk assessment. What makes us think that, this recommendation from the review, number one, the review panel, how are they consulting with the community? Are they consulting with the community? And if the review panel was actually put recommendation out there, how much of that will be reflected? That I don't know. I have to actually leave it to you to raise your concerns with the relevant people. Now, the next question I'll ask, which I read, I think is very similar to the previous question, but do you think the people will be interested in us with what is going on with the virus?
Yeah, so as we spoke about before, I don't think one negates the other. I think it's really, really clear to us that we can deal with both issues, and just remember, we as a community are here for all of you. So this is the nature of our campaign. We don't want to be fighting this campaign, but we are. But that doesn't mean we can't help you in other ways. So by all means, reach out. If you're a community member out there who is struggling in some way, we as a community must stand together, and we are here for you. So again, contact us by whatever means. Jump online, share your experiences. We will help you out. Yep. And Bon, can I just pick up on, just quickly, I know we have other questions there, but you spoke about what can we expect once that report is handed down? And we know in Canada they're saying same things. We know here in Richmond we can expect that report to say the same things. But the decision is still with the government.
Exactly.
So I just want to remind people, and some of you have heard me talk about this already, but we must hold our elected representatives accountable. We want to work collaboratively. We have shown up to everyone's door and always acted in good faith. We have conducted ourselves with the utmost decorum, and I would challenge anyone to ever say otherwise. So we want to work together in good faith. We recently, as MRAC and the Victorian Street Business Association, contacted the Premier and Minister Wynne. And let's keep in mind also that Minister Wynne is also the state member for Richmond, right? Now, we contacted them and we said, look, we want to work with you. You know what's going on. We've been describing our experiences to you. We want to come and meet with you in good faith, and we want to be part of the solution. And we have heard nothing. So let's be serious about it. We employed them. They don't have a right to their jobs. We as individuals vote for them. So if they won't listen to you, then what do? Get rid of them. So let's be serious about that. We don't want to have to do that. We expect our government to look after us. That's why they're there. But we are their employers. So I encourage everyone to remember that's how you stand up for yourself. They're going to try and make it hard for us. They already have. They're going to try and dismiss you, but what they rely on is your apathy. Don't be caught in that trap. Stand up for yourself. Cast your vote, whether that's at local level, state level or federal level. Hold your members accountable. So that also goes some way towards what happens next. What happens after today? What happens over the next coming weeks? We don't want to, as you said, have to fight this fight. We want to work with you to implement a solution. But make no mistake, we as a community are going nowhere. Richmond will never, ever, ever be silenced. And you can try as much as you like to separate community and traders. We know you've tried that. We will never be separated. We stand together as a united community and we will bring the fight to your steps if need be, whether that's council, whether that's the minister's office or whether that's the steps of Parliament House. We will come to you and we will never be silenced. So understand that, everyone. As a community, your voice, your collective voice is what matters.
Yeah, I think that's important. I mean, in the democratic world, I mean, we have the right to protect our interests. And yes, government is there to support our interests as well. I mean, at the end of the day, government want the community in harmony, to live in harmony. And I think that Richmond, there was a lot of ethnic community that lived together quite well.
Yes.
Very successfully as well. Richmond, I think that you could proudly say to the rest of the world that we live in world that actually I think that Victoria was the most livable city for many years, but I think Richmond is actually it could be the most livable city, for our Victoria here as well, Yes. And you could, I don't know whether you could say that now, but that was just my point previously.
And Bon, that's what we're fighting to preserve. Because you're quite correct. Marie and I are only relatively new to Richmond, a couple of years. But it's one of the things that drew us here in the first place.
Yep.
And it's one of our proudest moments. Our neighbours, our wonderful Vietnamese neighbours, everyone that we meet every day is such a wonderful place. And that is why we refuse to have that destroyed. We refuse to be abandoned and we refuse to allow the government to destroy those strengths that you talk about.
Absolutely. David, the next question would be that I think that this question is related to the 7 check-in room. Do you have any figure on how many emails were sent to the Premier office?
Oh, that's actually a very good question. I don't have an exact number, but I know that many of our community members say to us all the time, I've just sent another email, I've sent my weekly email, I've shared my experiences. So I think it's fair to say that both the Premier's office and many of the ministers and local government, they've all received plenty of emails. But that's also a really, really important thing to remember. So part of the challenge of being such a large campaign is that you rely on your small executive team to run that campaign on a day-by-day basis.
Yep.
But it's also important for you to continue to raise your personal voice as well. So we'll do the research, we'll do the organising, we'll give the heart to the campaign. But please, as individual community members and as business leaders, community leaders, continue to send those emails. Continue to write your letters to the editor. Continue to stand united against this dereliction of state government duty.
But could make a suggestion that if you were to send those emails, could you actually CC to some of us so that we can have some of the examples, on record?
Always good to include.
Exactly,
Yep.
exactly. The next question, I think that you might have addressed this question before, but I will ask anyway. Why does the General Council appear not to care about us, those who live here?
This is a really important question, and we spoke about this briefly before about how well Yarra Council, or City of Yarra, for those who aren't familiar with it, actually represent their community. And we know for a fact that there is at least one councillor who has spoken openly about the need to relocate. There are other councillors that when you speak to them, you know that they don't think it's a good idea to have it there, but because of their party affiliations, aren't able to speak up. And this is also an important, I suppose, dovetail into what we were saying with, if you're going to exercise your democratic right, if you're going to consider whether or not your current elected members at any level represent you adequately, start to think about the impact that their party affiliation is having on their ability to represent you.
Okay, there was one more last question that was sent from one of the actually streamer here as well. So I'll read it out to you. But we got another 10 minutes, so everyone, another 10 minutes. We want to answer this question. Folks. We have this question, and then we will actually try to wrap it up.
Yes.
Okay, and then what we might indicate to people that what we're going to do next as well. Sorry, this is actually gone open. Oh, here it is.
There we go.
Okay. Oh, here it is. The last question would be, not the last question, but the next question would be, by the time that we're waiting for the local government, I think it's state government, have a final decision. What should we do to protect ourselves? Also keeping the business in the local, in this location safe, and more convenient for the customer as well.
Yes. And
what can we do?
And this is really one of our most significant challenges, but we will rise to this challenge as well. So our businesses here on Victoria Street were already suffering badly from the effects of the injecting room. And now, with the challenges that come with coronavirus, many of them are right on the edge. Yep. So we must work together, and we must demand of, again, government at all levels, but let's start with the City of Yarra and the state government. You must step in and help these businesses. You must step in and work with the community. We know that you've already started down that path, but we implore you to do whatever you can. And we implore you to recognise that if you're a Victoria Street trader, you were already struggling.
Absolutely.
You were already suffering from this neglect. So we really need to make sure that we work together, both community and government, to find ways that we can keep these businesses alive. And we know that we can do that. There are other options.
Absolutely. David, I know, is there any other question that actually come in? If not, then maybe we should wrap it up. And I think, David, the fact that actually we are here on this occasion and we are talking to our people, that when our fellow local residents that are at home, we are caring for Richmond. Okay, we are not putting the safety of our safety at risk. We understand that the virus is actually very dangerous, and I actually absolutely I appreciate the efforts and all the hard work that actually been poured in from the federal government and state government as well, and I appreciate that. But as your fellow Australians, I believe that we're going to pull through. We are going to be together, and we are going to get through, like the Prime Minister said, we're going to get through to the other side. But what it is meant for us when we get to the other side, is it Richmond going to be an empty place? No, I don't think so. We need to work together to revitalize Richmond again, so it can be a livable city again. Yes. And I think that I absolutely believe that the virus is going to be gone. We should be confident enough that our government will be taking care of us. But having that belief, meaning that we have to do more work so that this problem, once the virus is gone, we can actually bring Richmond back to the way it was. Now I put commitment to you, because Richmond has actually very close with me. So I'm actually, whatever action that you are deciding to take, I am actually putting my intention to be with you. Okay. Now, if you like us, if you like our format of discussion here, please go in and like it or share it to your friends. I know that not many of you might have the opportunity to see it live today, but you can share that and bring it on board as well. Whatever action that you or the residents here want to take, I will actually. I have expressed my intention earlier that I will be absolutely with the local residents.
Thank you, Bon. We appreciate that. And so, as Bon just alluded to, people, this is really the difference of today's event. So you didn't get the chance to walk today, but you can achieve the same results and better. How do you do that? So go online, share like, tag your friends, and if there are any questions that we didn't answer today, if there are any things that you want to raise as issues or questions you want answered, post those to our website, post those to our social media accounts. Keep commenting, keep sharing, keep the message alive. This is the way you rally today. So, wrapping all of that up, continue to stand together. Look after each other. As Bon said, stay safe, stay strong. Know that you have a coordinated voice behind you. You have someone who will stand up for you, whether it's today, tomorrow, or in 6 months' time. We are committed to the community, but use the power of social media to maximise your impact. Jump on there, comment, question, share, tag it to as many friends. Even if you don't consider them friends, tag them anyway. Anyone you can, share this rally with, be a part of it all. Now, the other thing is, continue to exercise your democratic right. You must make our politicians understand that you will not stand by and be neglected. They have a right to protect and preserve you, to preserve your safety, to preserve your well-being. So keep the lobbying strong. Now also, we hope that you've enjoyed this forum. You know that we had to change it up pretty quickly. It's presented some challenges for us today, but if you enjoyed it, the good news is there will be more. This
Absolutely.
is a really powerful way for us to engage with you. And let's be clear, we get contacted from communities all around Australia and around the world now. The message is going out more broadly.
Yep.
We spoke purely about Canada, but there are others. There are others that are experiencing the same challenges, and Richmond can be a role model for others. So stay strong, everyone. Stay safe. Look after each other. Know that we're here for you, and keep fighting the fight. Thank you for joining us.
I have a message. Hang on, I have a message.
Oh, sorry, Bob.
I have a message for the government. I mean, in terms of local government and state government and federal government as well. Look, I know that it is a tough time. We are not here to actually criticize you. We are not here to work against you. We want to work with you. Together, I believe that you can help us to put the interests of the Richmond people first. And I know that at the moment, the coronavirus is actually taking priority, but also the Richmond issue is also important as well. Work together. Please help us to work together. We can put the interests of our local residents first here, because I think this local issue here is first and foremost, is actually priority after the coronavirus, ladies and gentlemen. So local residents, we will be with you.
Thank you, Bon. And can I just say, part of our response to the coronavirus, Bon, you taught me a new greeting. So thank you.
Thank you so much, David.
Thank
and
you,
the team
Bon.
as well. And the
Yep.
team as well. Thank you
Thank
so
you,
much.
everyone. Thank you for joining us. Stay strong. We're with you.